Okay, what contingencies should a buyer be aware of when they enter into a real estate contract? Okay, so in most cases, there's a few kind of built-in contingencies to the contract. Contingency meaning depending on how this goes, you don't have to proceed with the contract. Okay, so the first contingency that most contracts start out with is what we call an option period. So a buyer has the unrestricted right to terminate the contract for any reason. So that's great for the buyer, not so great for the seller. Sellers don't have option periods like that generally. But the reason that the buyer has the option period contingency is to have a home inspection. So you might call that an inspection contingency. It's really not a contingency, it's just an option period. So the buyer can terminate for any reason. It usually would be because the inspection didn't go well and we couldn't negotiate something to keep the deal together. So that's the first one. The next one is the appraisal contingency. So this is the next most common one, is that depending on the type of financing, the contract will state that the house has to appraise for at least the contract price. So if the appraisal comes in low, the buyer is no longer obligated to proceed with the contract unless we renegotiate. The seller is not in a situation where they have to reduce, but they need to understand that if they don't, if we can't come to an agreement in which how to keep the deal together, that the buyer is able to get out of the contract at that point. So those are the two most common types of contingencies. Other types of contingencies can be written into a contract. A buyer might have a true contingency contract in which they have another property they need to sell in order to close on the deal. And if that property doesn't sell, then they don't have to proceed with the purchase. So any contingency is going to come across to the seller as not a great thing because it just creates more uncertainty. Some contingencies like the option period and the appraisal are more expected. The contingency in which a buyer has to sell another property opens up a series of questions for the seller in regard to how easy that is to accomplish. And there can be other contingencies as well, but those are the most common. Hey, do you have any questions or comments about what you heard just there? Hey, send us a direct message because it's always better to talk to a real estate expert before doing real estate stuff.